and welcome to the continuation of the instructions on the Buddhist path. Oh, hello. Where'd you all come from?
Magic.
Sending love. We manifested. So the last time we talked about, we're covering the Four Noble Truths, right? The Four Noble Truths was the prescription from the Buddha, and this is a Buddhist path. Mindfulness is a Buddhist practice. And this was his prescription to end all stress and suffering, the Four Noble Truths. So if you're going to meditate, I think I told you last time that every time I went on a retreat, they would talk about the Four Noble Truths, and I'd be like, Four Noble Truths, geez, here we go again. And then after a while, I decided to practice the Four Noble Truths and to integrate them into my life as a practice. And then these, what used to be boring teachings became alive and rich and so deep. There's so many subtle layers to the Four Noble Truths. So I'm just going to be, like I usually say, scratching the surface, but hopefully opening the door for you to start integrating and practicing the Four Noble Truths into your spiritual lives, to whatever degree you choose to. So last time we talked about the first noble truth. You all can read, right? The truth of suffering, of dukkha. And we talked a lot about how pain is inevitable in life. We can't be a human being without pain. We're going to deal with pain. But suffering is optional, right? And suffering is what happens when we resist pain that's going to naturally occur in our lives. And we went really much deeper in it the first time. So today we're going to start to cover the second noble truth. And remember that this prescription is freedom from stress and suffering as a human being. Not freedom from pain. We're going to feel physical pain. We're going to feel occasional mental or emotional pain. It's part of being a human being. But we're not going to suffer if and when we can integrate the Four Noble Truths to us. At least we'll suffer less. And what's on the other side? We'll feel a lot more joy and peace. Who here could go for a little bit more joy and peace? Anybody? Right? Can I get a hallelujah? Someone said I should say halabuddha. Oh, it's getting ridiculous now, sorry. So suffering is caused by, and I'm going to get up for a minute. This is the second noble truth. So the first noble truth says we need to get to know our suffering. We need to really intimately understand when we're suffering, right? In our lives. See it clearly. Become a scientist of our suffering. The second noble truth invites us to look at what is at the root of our suffering. What is causing our suffering, right? So anybody know what Tanha stands for? Suffering is caused by
Attachment.
Great. Craving. And there are a lot of other words that could work for craving. What are derivatives of craving?
Clinging.
Okay, wanting, clinging, desiring, desire. Did I hear someone say attachment?
Attachment.
And my favorite lately, can you all see over there? Oh, this beautiful thing. You need to be able to see it. This is my favorite one lately, thirst. An unquenchable thirst. Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about this. And there might be some other ones. That's a good beginning. So let's explore this. So we're talking about the craving and clinging and attachment and wanting mind that leads to suffering and discontent, that causes suffering and discontent and disappointment and sadness and frustration and hurt feelings and obsessive thinking that we can't let go of, right? And so many other things. If you really want to become a Buddhist nerd, you'll get Dhammapada. It's some of the original Buddhist teachings. And this is what the Buddha said about some of the things he said about craving. Whoever in this world is overcome by this wretched, clinging thirst, his sorrows grow like birana grass after rain. So apparently birana grass grew very quickly and very high.
What in the grass?
Birana grass, I guess it's native to India, where he was from. So whoever in this world is overcome by this wretched clinging thirst, his sorrows grow like birana grass after rain. We could say weeds in our garden. The other thing that he said, but whosoever in this world overcomes this wretched craving, so difficult to overcome, their sorrows fall away from them like water drops from a lotus leaf. Like water drops from a lotus leaf. That's beautiful. So I love the symbolism in Buddhism of craving. As you may have heard this, as the hungry ghost. And they said the hungry ghost is a hell realm that we go to. So apparently, according to Buddhist cosmology, if we spend our whole life giving in to craving and addiction, then we may go to this hell realm of the hungry ghosts. And in the hungry ghosts, we have these huge, big, bloated bodies with a huge belly, with a little tiny pinhole for a mouth and a little tiny skinny neck. So with an unquenchable hunger. So we're starving all the time, but we can't possibly get enough food down our little pinhole mouth to get all the food that we need. So we're constantly seeking and seeking and seeking and always hungry for more. So the Buddha teaches, and this practice teaches, that if we want to stop our suffering and our stress or whatever is arising for us, we need to go to the root of what's causing it and alleviate that. Right? That makes sense. And for instance, if we were to step on a splinter and get a splinter in the bottom of our foot, we'd have to look at the bottom of our foot and, hopefully pull out the piece of wood in order to alleviate ourselves from our suffering, from our splinter. So this tanha, this uncontrolled instinct, it's out of control. It's a deep down desire that takes over our minds and our hearts. And I like to use the word that it hijacks us. And it totally takes over, but I love Joseph Goldstein. I just was on a 9-day retreat with him, and he calls it the black lab mentality or the black lab energy. Have you heard this before? So he said it's like if you watch a black lab outside, they are totally run by their desires. They're like, oh, I hear something. I'm going to go over here and see what I'm hearing. Oh, wait a minute, I smell something really good. I'm going to go over and smell. Oh, wait a minute, squirrel. I'm going to catch a squirrel. So they're just constantly being run by this next desire after the next desire after the next desire. And he said when we get stuck in craving, it's like getting stuck in black lab mentality. Right, we are no longer in the driver's seat. this energy that's taken over is in the driver's seat. And we're at the mercy of this craving, right? The untrained mind, I talk about this a lot, is wired to experience craving and uncontrolled desires. We are actually wired to be, because we're wired to desire the pleasant and avoid unpleasant, right? That's a tendency that we have in order to get caught in craving. And this pervasiveness of desire, this wanting mind, can get out of control if our instinct for wanting more pleasure takes over. I love the story of Lenny and John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. If they didn't force me to read that in college, I never would have read it. Anyhow, but Lenny is this large, sensitive, very kind man who loved this pet mouse that he found. And it was like his only and best friend. And so he carried this mouse around everywhere he went, and he was such a big man. His grip on his mouse that he loved so much, he ended up killing it inadvertently. He didn't mean to. But he ended up killing the thing that he loved most because he was holding on to it too tightly. No symbolism there, huh? So desire in and of itself is not a bad thing. Desire is a good thing. It can be a wholesome thing, right? Desire is what has kept us alive, kept us from walking in front of a truck outside, keeping us safe. It's motivated us to eat and procreate, to keep our species alive. So in and of itself, desire or wanting mind and all this is not a problem. But it's a problem. When is it a problem? When we cling to it, right? And we cling and crave so much that we have to satisfy it. So when we get over that threshold, when it becomes an unwholesome desire versus a wholesome desire. And it's really interesting when we do this practice, we'll start to notice that a very wholesome desire can start out, have great intentions, and wholesome desire can turn into an unwholesome desire very quickly. And sometimes they're mixed. So we can have some wholesome intentions and then some unwholesome ones as well. The craving mind, we need to explore it when it's present. We need to recognize it, we need to explore it. There's a sense of course, wanting, needing to have, desiring, but there's also a leaning forward. Anybody been really excited about an upcoming vacation or trip you're going to have, and you can't think of anything else except for your preparations for this trip? Anybody? Right? You're not even here anymore. You're already on your trip. Right? And then you get yourself all stressed out because of everything you have to do before you leave. So there's a forward-thinking, future-thinking, loss of the present moment. And we can't satisfy or relax until we quench whatever it is that we're obsessed about, that we're really wanting. It's kind of like if you're really stuck in a really strong craving. I had some addiction problems when I was younger, drug addiction problems. And if anyone here has ever struggled with addictions, that's the hungry ghost, right? That craving that takes over. We form the habitual. So at first, we have a desire, right? Or perhaps our situation is unpleasant. It's hard to deal with. We're suffering, right? It's really unpleasant. So then we form this craving to avoid our circumstance. I'll talk more about it. So then we desire something to alleviate our suffering. Maybe it's a drink or a joint or whatever opiate or something. And then we take our drug of choice, and then we're relieved for a little while, right? We feel a little sense of, oh, thank goodness, I feel better. And then we come down, because nothing lasts forever. And then the stress comes back, and then we have to do it again. So we form this cycle of abuse, and it becomes a habit, right? And the craving becomes a well-worn neural pathway habit. And it turns into an addiction. And what's really interesting is that I haven't met anyone who has not been addicted to something. Has anyone here not been addicted to something? Chocolate? Ice cream? Coffee, caffeine, that's my drug of choice if I were to use it. Right? Anyone willing to call out anything else you're addicted to?
Drugs.
Drugs? Sex?
Alcohol.
Alcohol? Anyone addicted to being busy? Right? I hear some laughter going on here. Anybody addicted to anything having to do with the internet? Any of these smart devices? When we become addicted to them, they suddenly become stupid devices, don't they?
Facebook is certainly addicting.
Yes, definitely. But the irony, what's really ironic about craving and satisfying our cravings is that we can never satisfy our cravings by fulfilling our desires. Should I say that again?
Yes.
We can never, ever fully satisfy our craving by fulfilling them. It's really ironic because the more we strengthen, the more we give into a craving, the more we're actually strengthening that habit. Right? Think about it. You crave sensual connection and sex with someone, and you have this great sexual experience with them, and then you take a nap. I'm just throwing that in there. I don't know if you take a nap. And then you wake up later, and guess what? It was so wonderful. When are we going to do it again? Right? When are we going to do it again? And that partner's not there. Now we're seeking someone because we want to keep fulfilling this craving, this desire, this lust, or whatever, however it's manifesting. We're not satiated for very long. It actually strengthens that habit, that desire. So when we get something we don't want, and we're wanting something else, what do we do to the thing that we don't want? Push it away. We push it away, right? And this is called aversion. Aversion. You guys are great. You can come up here and finish. Yeah, aversion, right? So aversion is a form of craving. We want something different. We don't want this. We want that. Right, so I'm going to push this away, and I'm going to try to pull this to me. We have to really see this inclination in the mind to push things away, to not want this, to want that. Right? Or we get what we want. We're satisfied for what? 10 minutes? Not very long. And if it was wonderful, then what do? We cling to it, we hoard it, we covet it, we want to keep it, we don't ever want to lose it, we want more of it. Do you hear what I'm saying? So that's where the clinging comes in. And it's it wouldn't be such a problem. But the whole time we're doing this, is anybody home? Are we mindfully present? No, we're not even here. We're not engaged. There's no wisdom, there's no choice, there's no open-hearted love. There's contraction and desire and wanting and clinging and holding and needing to have and pushing and pulling. And, It's a war, and it's a war zone. And it creates our suffering. And it's excruciatingly painful. And online I find a lot of really nice, funny Jewish jokes, so if you don't find them funny, I apologize ahead of time, but here's one. A nice Jewish boy meets the girl he'd like to marry. He realizes she has to run the gauntlet with his mother, so he decides he'll take 2 other girls home as well with her to see if his mother will be able to choose the one he wants to marry. So he's trying to soften the blow of his upcoming girlfriend. He gets home, the 3 girls sit down on the sofa opposite his mother. After 2 minutes, she says to her son, "It's the one on the left." He says, "Mother, that's amazing, it's incredible. How could you guess? How could you work out she's the one I want to marry?" And his mother shrugs and says, "Because I already don't like her." I like that one. So the Buddha talked a lot about this inherent dissatisfaction that human beings feel, right? Even when things are going great, there can be this little undercurrent of angst. Like, yeah, things aren't quite right. And Rick Hansen, a neuropsychologist, calls this the negativity bias. We're always looking at what's missing or how things could be better. You know, even when they're great, how things could be better. Beautiful day. Yeah, it was a little hot. If it was just like 2.5 degrees cooler, I would have been happy. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there is this never enoughness within us, always wanting more, wanting it to be different, and it's so prevalent in our minds and our hearts. It's part of the human condition. You're not alone. We're not alone. You know, it's the nature of the human mind. So it's really important to be able to look at with mindful awareness every moment that we feel that it's not quite right. Something not, kind of missing. Forget the really strong cravings, those are going to come and go. But other times are we kind of like, I'll be happy when this happens. Or if this happens, then I'll be happy. Or if that happens, then I'll be able to relax. Do you hear the if then, when then? And so what are we doing when we keep putting conditions on our happiness or our peacefulness? Conditions have to line up a certain way according to our cravings and clingings and attachments before we can feel okay. And do conditions usually line up the way we want them to?
No.
Right? I was so shocked when I was younger. Why is the world not cooperating? So there are 3 kinds of craving for sense pleasures that I'll briefly mention, and I'll get up. Oh, this should be interesting. Okay. The first kind is craving for Sense pleasures. What are some sense pleasures that we mentioned?
Sex, food,
Sex, food,
drink, touch.
touch. Good. Bhava tanha. Okay, the second kind is the craving for. I knew that Dennis knew this because we were talking about it. For becoming. And this is for or being, and it's called bhava. Oh, I did this wrong. This is kama tanha. Sorry. Bhava tanha. And the third kind is a craving for not being or extinction. And this is called vibhava tanha. So the craving for becoming, right? This is our attachment to our ideas of ourselves, wanting to become a professor or a specialist in something, and being really attached to our identity of who we think we are, and we have to tell everybody that we're a, whatever it is. Hello, my name is Ronya, and I'm a Buddhist teacher. Right? If I lead with that, then I'm really identified with my being a Buddhist teacher. Right? So this is wanting to become somebody, get really clinging and attached to that. You can be attached to ideas of yourself, perceptions, memories. I was attached at one point to the idea of being an honest person, and anytime anyone would question my integrity, I would freak out. Be like, I'm an honest person, why are you questioning my... So I saw that I had this attachment to seeing myself as an honest person. So this craving for not being, for extinction, what do you think that is?
Aversion.
Aversion. Great. Wanting something to end. Wanting freedom from whatever the situation is. Right? The desire to crawl into a cave for the next 6 months. Has anybody ever had that? Right? Not wanting to be alive anymore. Feeling suicidal can be the other side of the spectrum, the maximum side of the spectrum of not wanting to be. But just wanting relief from a difficult situation, or wanting relief from something that's very unpleasant. So those are the three kinds of craving. If anybody ever been awake in the middle of the night and wanted to sleep? That's the third one. That's the craving for non-existence, for extinction. Right? She wanted to be sleeping now. Anyhow. So what do? We need to, like I said before, I hinted that we need to become really curious about our cravings. When we're not wanting our experience to be the way it is, or we're wanting more, we're feeling any sort of stress, we get to look at, what am I craving right now? What am I aversive towards? And then, can I recognize it? Can I investigate it? Can I hold it with kindness? Can I allow it to be here? Can I see it as a visitor who needs my attention right now? So we need to see the suffering clearly, and we use our mindfulness practice to do that, to explore it. I recently heard that someone was complaining about me behind my back and to some other people that I knew. And I was really suffering. And I knew I was suffering. I was like, whoa. So when I was willing to sit down and be with it, I realized that I was really clinging to wanting peace and quiet in my relationships and just wanting harmony. So I was craving harmony. So when you sit down, if you ever want to sit down and contemplate this, there's a lot to contemplate. Trust me, you'll have plenty of opportunities in your life to see any kind of contraction. You can sit down and sit with it, and you can explore it. You can see what you're associated with that you dislike in your life right then. How does it feel in your heart, your mind, your body? What is it that you're really wanting? What's underneath the surface here? Because it's usually something other than what we think it is. Right. We're animals, by the way. Did you know that? We are. We're animals, and we have animal desires, and we come from the animal realm, and we have these fears and instincts and conditioning and all of pain and trauma and pain body. If we don't integrate them into our being, right, this trauma and this animal nature takes control and it wreaks havoc in our life. And it hurts our relationships, not only with ourselves, but with others. So we really need to look at these cravings clearly and see what's there so we're no longer led by them. And we integrate them into our lives by turning towards them, right? Look at all the spiritual teachers we keep hearing about who are sexually exploiting their students. I'm like, oh yay, we haven't heard about this for at least a year now. Oops, here we go again. Right?
Why is it?
And they have not integrated their sexual desires, their animal instincts, into their beingness. You know, and I'm not an expert on this. But when we turn towards these energies that take over us, and we work with them skillfully, then they're no longer in control. We can have a choice point of what's skillful with this energy, what's unskillful with this energy. How can I express this energy in a wholesome way without harming myself or anyone else? That's our practice. Right? But when we push this part of ourselves away and pretend like spiritual materialism, I'm over this, I've overcome my sexual desires, right? Then that becomes a shadow that I haven't dealt with, shadow energy, that now is in control, and I'm blind to it, and it can eke out in really dysfunctional ways, right? For any of us. And it doesn't necessarily have to be around sex, it can be around other energies as well. So we want to integrate these energies, these difficult cravings into our lives, integrate them with wisdom. They're not a bad thing, they're just energies that need to be worked with as part of our practice. And what comes as a byproduct is equanimity. Equanimity is the prize that we get when we learn to integrate these things. And we learn to stop clinging, and we feel more joy and peace.
Would you define equanimity?
Yes, and in the discussion I will, thank you. So here's, but in the Dhammapada, crossing the stream. But Buddha, yeah. If Few cross over the river. Most are stranded on this side. On the riverbank, they run up and down. But the wise person following the way crosses over beyond the reach of death, free from desire, free from possessions, free from attachment and appetite, follows the ways of awakening, and rejoices greatly in one's freedom. In this world, the wise person becomes oneself a light, pure, shining, free. So thank you so much for being here to explore your own practices and the Second Noble Truth. And there's a lot more to delve into, so let's do that. Thank you.